Welcome to Impressions from My Bookshelf. I'm Rick Pidcock, and this is a review of The Unbearable Wholeness of Being, God, Evolution, and the Power of Love by Ilia Delio. It was released in April 1st of 2013, and Ilia Delio is a Franciscan sister in Washington, D.C. She holds the Josephine C. Connolly Endowed Chair in Theology at Villanova University. She has doctorates in pharmacology and in historical theology, and she's an award-winning author and lecturer on topics such as evolution, artificial intelligence, consciousness, and religion. So, as modern science has revealed over the last few hundred years in particular, that the cosmos is not centered on Earth and humanity like people have believed for thousands of years, there has been a growing realization that the story in Genesis of the Garden of Eden does not exactly fit the cosmos that we can observe through science. And so, as a result, the church has really come to lack a fundamental meta-narrative that fits with our modern understanding of reality. And so, Ilia Delio is dealing with this, and she's trying to show that need for a larger story that can include diversity and difference, and in which our local stories can thrive. And so that is her goal for this book. And so she begins by exploring that issue of the decentered human. And basically, the church for thousands of years believed that the cosmos centered on the earth, and that God was imaged in humanity as the center of the earth. And so when Copernicus came along and confirmed that actually the earth is not the center of the cosmos, there was a decentering that happened. Ilia Delio says, the displacement of the earth from a stable center caused a dislocation of the human person from the center of creation. The decentering of the human person was also the decentering of God. And so then the Reformation came along and emphasized sola scriptura. And while it didn't mean to separate itself from nature, it ultimately led to what she calls a radical anthropocentrism and a preoccupation with sin and grace. And so anxiety began to grow, and Christianity, she says, was not prepared to move from an understanding of the cosmos that was built on stability and immutability to a cosmic order based on change. And so, with that decentering explored, she then gets into wholeness in nature. She talks about how evolution is a movement toward more complex life forms, in which, at critical points in the evolutionary process, qualitative differences emerge. She talks about how the universe is evolving toward greater wholes, and how we are being drawn by something up ahead that's converging us together. She explores quantum physics and how it shows that the entire universe is what she calls a complicated web of relations between the various parts of the whole. She gets into quantum entanglement, which shows that even our interaction is non-local, which means that it can happen from a distance without crossing space. And so we begin to see this shift in between the cosmos that Christianity was formed in and the one that we now realize that we have is really a shift from objects that are separate from one another and independent of one another to a shift toward relationships. And she discusses this. She calls these relationships holons, and she explains it as that we are wholes within wholes. She says a whole atom is part of a whole molecule, and a whole molecule is part of a whole cell. A whole cell is part of a whole organism. Similarly, the human person is a whole within self, and yet a part of a large communal whole that is part within a whole society. And then she begins to explore this concept of a relational universe of wholes within wholes, within the contexts of love and sex, our ideas of God, love and suffering, sacred secularity, Christian love, learning and the desire for power, technology and noogenesis, in which she gets into some interesting ideas about transhumanism and ultrahumanity as our current stage of evolution. And then she talks about how a contemplative evolution affects consciousness and worship and transformation and hope. So I absolutely agree with Delio's critique of traditional Christian theology, that it was formed in a cosmos that is no longer, you know, consistent with our understanding of reality. And the issue is that because theology tries to describe the relationship between God and the cosmos, we now know that this cosmos that we thought we were lived in no longer exists. And so when you fundamentally change the nature of the cosmos, you have to be open to questioning your understanding of its relationship to God, from whom it would flow and in whom it would exist. So this does not mean that Ilia Delio has all of the final, perfect, best answers in everything that she talks about. She is like she's a excellent scientist and theologian, and she's like a child who's exploring the cosmos. And so there are times where I wonder if some of her conclusions are a little too certain about the infinite. But ultimately, I think that her observations are very consistent with reality, and something I think that her writings are some writings and teachings that Christians today need to follow her example in our posture of exploring the universe.